What is this Chat GPT? So I guess this program's pretty smart. It's not smarter than me though. Is it? Okay, let's see. Draft a residential lease that complies with Chapter 92 of the Texas Property Code. All right, big guy, let's see what you can do. Oh, well, yeah, okay, no, interesting. Yeah, okay. Wow, that was fast. So I've been hearing a lot about this Chat GPT thing, this AI that's supposed to revolutionize the world and really come for all of our jobs. Can it really produce a lease? Yeah, it can, in a matter of seconds. So I got really curious about what exactly this thing was. I've watched videos, I've seen news articles, watched television on the subject, and I'm really curious as to whether or not this program can really do the things that people claim. It writes book reports, it writes reviews, it can transcribe my video and then crank out a pretty clever sounding synopsis. It's amazing, and all it takes is a few clicks on the keyboard. All I did to produce this lease, I typed in draft a residential lease that complies with the Texas Property Code Chapter 92. And it gave me a lease in a matter of seconds. What did we just witness here? This is a lease. This is a perfectly usable, short lease. The real question is, does it actually comply with Chapter 92 of the Texas Property Code? Yes and no. So there are certain provisions of the Property Code that are definitely left out. But the truth is, this thing got pretty close in a matter of seconds. How long is it going to be before this AI is able to crank out something as good, if not better, than an attorney? I don't know, but for sure, what was produced here can be evaluated by an attorney, and I can tell you whether or not it lines up well with the property code. And what I can tell you is it's pretty good as a sort of general idea of what a lease is supposed to look like, but it's not good enough because it doesn't include provisions that are absolutely required. It doesn't bold and highlight provisions that the property code requires. But the truth is, it's a helpful guide. If you've never seen a residential lease before and you asked a computer to just crank one out, the truth is Google's going to give you all sorts of versions of a residential lease, and you might be pretty impressed by what you see on Google, what you see on Chat GPT. The question is, do you know how to discern between what's good enough and what isn't? And that's where experience comes in, and that's where talking to a legal expert comes in. So what's really lacking here? Honestly, they hit a lot of the major points, but there's a few things that are left out that I really would have included. So I'll mention a few things just right off the bat. The draft of the lease itself doesn't technically refer to any of the provisions in Chapter 92 of the Texas Property Code. That's the first telltale sign that it's smart, but it's not quite there yet. Certain provisions of the Property Code require that the landlord, in writing, in bold or underlined print, inform the tenant of certain rights, duties, and obligations. This lease doesn't do that. One such provision is the provision on repairs. The property code is pretty strict about a landlord informing their tenant in their lease of their rights for repair requests, particularly for repairs that materially affect the health and safety of an ordinary tenant. That language simply is not present in the current lease. Another issue that's completely left out of this lease is the issue of animals. This lease doesn't actually mention whether or not there is a prohibition on any kind of animal entering the premises. It's just silent on it. And like with any lease, whenever a term is completely silent, that ambiguity creates confusion, and it could ultimately prevent you as a landlord from prohibiting action that you didn't address. Another matter in here that's not addressed at all is the issue of smoking. And some landlords feel pretty strongly against smoking and want those provisions prominently featured in their lease. This lease, again, doesn't mention it at all. And the problem with that is that new landlords sometimes are not cognizant of problems because they've never had any. And because of that, they won't even think about a provision that's missing from their lease until they later want to enforce it and find it was never there. And probably the biggest missing piece of this particular lease is a default provision. This particular lease doesn't even mention what happens in the event of a default. Naturally, you as a landlord are going to want a lease that strongly protects you in the event that your tenant just doesn't do the right thing. You want to be able not just to declare that a lease is in default, you want to be able to enforce it in the easiest way that the Texas Property Code allows, which is by demand of eviction. That notice to vacate is a strong and quite effective means. And this lease doesn't really lay out those terms, that upon default, upon violation of any of the terms of this lease, that you have the right to declare the lease immediately terminated and issue a notice to vacate. The language just isn't in this particular document. Additionally, and this is one of my favorite provisions, there's no attorney fee provision in this. And so are you able to collect attorney fees from a tenant if you are trying to enforce this particular lease? Questionable. And without it explicitly mentioned in your lease, some judges just aren't going to do it. So in general, are there good things that ChatGPT can do? Absolutely. Definitely, this is a good baseline. And if you've never seen a Texas residential lease before, why not? Ask the AI to create all sorts of things, but I would temper your enthusiasm about just how effective a document like this can be. AI is getting good, but it's not perfect. And for as long as we can keep it this way, attorneys are still going to be necessary to answer some of these more particular questions. How protected are you as a landlord? How close are you to being in full compliance with the law? How likely is it that your lease is going to hold up and going to generate the best business result for you? These are things that come with experience that maybe sometime in the future ChatGPT 5 will have figured out. All right, let's see how smart you are. Good start, but not a great product. Not when it comes to generating a residential lease. If you've got a lease that you want reviewed or checked out, if you've got something that maybe you're unsure comports or complies with the property code of your jurisdiction, you're always recommended and encouraged to seek out legal counsel. Here in Texas, I'd be happy to review anybody's lease just to make sure that it still complies with the current state of Texas law, or if it's out of compliance, I can give you a path to finding a lease that will work in the event that you have to enforce it, or if your tenant ever seeks to challenge you in court because your written lease falls short. Don't put yourself in a bind by getting an insufficient document. Make sure that you've got something that works for you every time. For additional information about leases and how they work, there's a video right here that's going to answer a lot of your questions. Until next time, happy leasing.